Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
I think that means we're on the air. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. And we're broadcasting from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Kyle's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, DocRam.com. Welcome, Rick.
Hi, God. It's a wind-up. Hi. Good morning. Yeah, you
it's
wind it
great
up.
to hear your voice.
I did a movie like that, a pilot, last weekend. I didn't know it was a pilot, and I was blown away. Dennis Dragon, a friend of mine, has a studio, Steve Miller's old studio here in Grants Pass at Pacifica. And he said, there's a party and good music. And I said, cool, you're invited. Okay. So Julie and I went, and it turned out it was not a party. It was a pilot shoot with directors and all kinds of things running around. And it's like hee-haw. And they had me as the scientist guy.
Did you have your hat on?
Oh, no, man. I had no clue. He said, just be yourself. And I didn't know what to do because everybody's doing pratfalls and craziness, you know, being hauled out because they got political or something. It's called Podunk. It's a little town called Podunk in the Free State of Jefferson. And the musicians that they had were as good as Roy Clark. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
The guy was perfect in his tone with his guitar. I've seen a couple of guitars. Even Eric Clapton was not as good as this guy in terms of purity of note. He was excellent. And so off we go. I didn't think it was going to go. I thought it was stupid. But you never know because, what do I know? And he said it's already been sold.
You know, you mentioned Roy Clark. Roy Clark grew up in a little hamlet called Meherrin, Virginia. And the claim to fame is that Roy Clark is from Meherrin. And he'd come back to his old stomping grounds every once in a while. And it was like the next town over from us, just a couple miles down the road. And he would come to Longwood University, and he'd play there. And we spent a lot of time at Longwood University. That's where one of the debates was, vice presidential debate at Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia. Just a little tidbit. Hey, Rick, really serious what's going on at the Hanford Reservation in Washington
It's really
State.
getting weird everywhere. If Hanford is leaking, you can well imagine what the New Madrid fault line is doing. I can't even fathom why anyone would be driven to want to build more nuclear reactors. It doesn't make any sense. We still don't have a way to deal with the waste material. That was supposed to be a solved technology, 10 years ago. And everyone, all of them, the General Electric, Daiichi Electric reactors, every single one of them is leaking. Hanford,
Okay.
You're going to need a Geiger counter now to buy fish.
Mm-hmm. Rick, you mentioned General Electric, and I'm glad you did. And one of the things that we do here at USA Prepares is we connect the dots, and we actually share experiences that we've had over the years to add additional evidence to the things that we're saying, to actually prove that they're true. Well, when I was working, it'd take me a couple minutes to tell this story, but it all is germane to the Hanford Reservation. It's all and radioactivity and nuclear reactors. So here's the story. When I worked in the banking world, every year for the 3 very large credit card banks I worked for and with, I would have an annual performance review. And what that meant was I'd get called into the boss's office, and sometimes it would be the boss would have a photocopy of the performance review for me. He'd have the identical copy on his desk, and we go line by line. Vinny, here's what I've seen that you've done last year, 12-month period. This is what you've done well. This is where you could use a little improvement. Stop beating up the other people you work with. Whatever it said, and I'd have one of these a year. Don't leave dead bodies all around. Then I got to the new boss who came from General Electric. Oh, let me go back just a couple steps. During the performance reviews, before the General Electric management style, I'd be asked, okay, so you built this computer system, you brought in this new computer, and it's a super mini computer. How long is it going to last? Well, boss, it's going to last between 5 and 8 years, maybe 10. Software, we're continuing to make improvements, and software upgrades and our programming efforts will extend the life expectancy. It supports X number of terminals, and here's what it's using, and here's what it's doing, and here's the internal customers we're supporting with it. What else have you done? And I talk about these projects that we've done and how they worked and how long they would last. And they were always interested in return on investment. How much did it cost us? How long is it going to last? How much money did you save? And does it work? Well, when we got the new boss from General Electric, he came with a General Electric management style. And the General Electric management style has a couple interesting, we'll call them features. I don't know if they're really features, they're kind of negatives. One of them is, you've got, of all the people that have been hired, 10% of them are on the bottom. 10% are the worst performers that the organization has. So we'll get rid of them. That's one thing that's part of the General Electric management style. 10% are on the bottom. In any organization, that's true. It's absolutely true. They may be great people, but in General Electric's view, they're on the bottom, so let's get rid of them. So they do. Another thing that General Electric does is a different way of performance measurement. And that is when you get hauled into the boss's office and the boss takes the document to review you, you've already seen it. You've already seen it. And the reason you've seen it is you've already filled it out. You filled out what you've done for the last year. And then you review with your boss what you tell him you've done. You fill out your own performance review. And then he talks about how you can do better. And then he adds, or she adds, additional information. So, for example, boss, I built this computer system. Okay, how long is it going to last? That's not a question that's asked. Why? Because the boss only wants to know what you have done this past year. You're not measured on what you have done, what you've done that will last 5, 8 years, 10 years in the future. They don't care about that. It's what have you done now, right now. And next year we'll talk about what you've done for that year. Now, what that tells me is that we're not looking toward the future. We're not looking at things the way I look at things, the way you look at things, Rick. And if we are building nuclear reactors and the people who are building them get the same kind of performance review that I got from the General Electric management style, they're not worried about tomorrow. They're not worried about a calamity, a catastrophe. They're not worried about a Fukushima. They're worried about right now. And their raise is based on what they've done for the last year, not how much concrete is in that reactor containment building, not how much steel, how much rebar, how much reinforcing, how much lead lining. They don't worry about that. What they're worried about is what has happened just now, because that's how the performance review is based. If that's the case, Rick, we've got a bunch of problems all over the world based on the General Electric management style, and that's my opinion. You have a reaction to that?
Yeah. Never mind, I'm not going to say it.
Rick, have you ever heard a story like that? That's absolutely true. I'm not making this up. I lived that. I lived that management
style. Some bad news? Yeah.
I thought that was bad news.
Okay. Yes, no.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Chemtrails One of the primary things it's doing, besides weather modification, of course, is now a radiation shield. I saw it. They had several trails, and then they ran a plasma across them. And it shielded nuclear radiation because we're slated to have a war with North Korea. They've been planning it all along. Good for business.
Rick, for those of us who have been paying attention, that is...
But the nuclear, they'll stop the radiation. It'll form a shield. Of course, it'll look like Battlefield Earth out of L. Ron Hubbard with a poisoned atmosphere and belching radiation in the air. But this is crazy to even think of it. And Trump, because they have tactical nukes now, this is that fluorine fusion bomb. And the precision on that is so concise that Russia just tested one up in the northern part of Russia. And it's creepy.
Rick, are you saying that this can be an oh yeah kind of a thing, like one country lets one off and the next country says oh yeah?
Well, the New World Order
two or three.
has an agenda, and part of that statement is 9/10 of the Earth is dead, gone. It's easier to rule a smaller group of people.
Henry Kissinger was at the White House. That's a pretty scary thought.
Wow, there he is. Yeah, Dr. Strangelove in costume.
He came out of hiding. I remember just before Bob Chapman died, I asked him about some of the players in the hierarchy of who runs what. And it's available. You can find it. I don't know the date. But many years ago, I asked, and it's available on YouTube. I asked Bob Chapman, where is Henry Kissinger in the scheme of things? How high up is he? Number 15. That's what he said. Henry Kissinger is number 15. We'll be right back. Hanford. Class Doc Rams with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And we've been talking about the Hanford site. And the Hanford site, according to Wikipedia, and let me just give you some of this information so you know what we're talking about if this is a new topic, is a mostly decommissioned nuclear production complex. It's operated by the United States federal government on the Columbia River in the United States in the state of Washington. It's on the West Coast. The site has been known by many names, including Hanford Project, Hanford Works, Hanford Engineer Works, and Hanford Nuclear Reservation. It was established in 1943 as part of the Manhattan Project in Hanford, South Central Washington State. And it was home to the B reactor, the first full-scale plutonium production reactor in the world. Plutonium is manufactured at the site is used in the first nuclear bomb tested at the Trinity site and Fat Man, and it was detonated over in Nagasaki, Japan. And during the Cold War, the project expanded to 9 nuclear reactors and 5 large plutonium processing complexes, which produced plutonium for most of the more than 60,000 weapons built for the U.S. nuclear arsenal. Nuclear technology developed rapidly during the period, and Hanford scientists produced major technological achievements there. Many early safety procedures and waste disposal practices were inadequate, and the government documents have confirmed that Hanford's operations released significant amounts of radioactive materials into the air and into the Columbia River. The weapons production reactors were decommissioned at the end of the Cold War, and decades of manufacturing left behind 53 million gallons of high-level radioactive waste stored within 177 storage tanks and an additional 25 million cubic feet of solid radioactive waste and 200 square miles of contaminated groundwater beneath the site. That's 200 square miles of contaminated groundwater. The federal agency charged with overseeing the site, the U.S. Department of Energy, emptied 149 single-shell tanks by pumping nearly all of the liquid waste out into 28 newer double-shell tanks. DOE later found that water intruding into at least 14 single-shell tanks, and that one of them had been leaking about 640 gallons per year into the ground since 2010. Here's the problem. So we've entrusted our government to take care of this, and they failed us miserably, right? Rick, I said it's a ticking time bomb. Do you think I was exaggerating it at all?
Well, our government isn't what we think it is. It's a monster. And it's the worst bully in world history. And we have, it's a shame. It's a shame because we were, the principles that we were founded on have been forgotten. I don't know.
Rick,
I have my own opinion.
Okay. All right. Rick, one of the things that we learned is that this is a decommissioned site. Decommission my foot. There are 3,000 people working there. How do 3,000 people work at a decommissioned site? And decommission sounds like it's inactive, not being used for anything.
Oregon's got a burial ground also, and that's the problem. They didn't know how to get rid of it except put it in the ground and let, history deal with it. And it's, nobody says, well, nobody wants to live there anyway. It's all lava and things like that. Hanford is next to the Columbia River, and that's a large river that dumps into the ocean. And my guess is that radioactive tuna and that was taken in San Francisco came from Hanford, not Fukushima. And they have had right on along. Hanford is, in my opinion, is considered an extinction of all life event. That's how bad it is.
All right. Let me just bring something.
Can't continue.
Let me just bring something close to home. When Mrs. Finelli and I go shopping for food, and she looks at the bags of apples, she reads where they're from. If they're from Washington State, she won't buy them. Is that something new? No. It's been like that as long as we've been married. We're talking almost 40 years. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, docram.com. Rick, I mentioned that Mrs. Finelli and I have been married almost 40 years, and we don't eat apples that come from Washington State. And here's why. We've known about the Hanford Reservation for a very long time. We know that it's been leaking. We know that the radioactive waste has been dumped on the ground. And here's the problem. And we've said this in the past. So the radioactive materials are in the soil, and then plants grow on the soil. And then wildlife come by and eat some of the plants, and eat some of the little bugs, and in nature's hierarchy, in the food chain. And then they all have waste. And then the waste gets deposited as these animals travel farther and farther away from the reservation. So we're talking about ants and rabbits and worms and birds, and they are ever increasing the circle of radioactivity outward from the dump site, from this nuclear reservation. So we're concerned about the Columbia River. Now we know that the radioactivity is leaking into the Columbia River, and it's going downstream, and the Columbia River enters into the ocean. We know that. We know that there are foodstuffs that are grown that are radioactive from there. That's a huge concern for us. Now, we've been told that it's okay. And there's a post that Joey sent me, I'm sure he sent it to you too, thank you, Joey, about the Hanford Reservation. And one of the quotes is in this article from Mike Adams, and that's naturalnews.com. The first rule of radiological disasters is that the government lies to the public. The government lies to the public. And it says, in the aftermath of the Fukushima fiasco, for example, we saw how the Japanese government regulators ordered radiation detection equipment turned off in order to avoid anyone seeing insanely high readings. Even as the fuel rods melted through the floor of the Fukushima Daiichi facility, robots were being fried by the radiation. The government told all of its citizens there was nothing to worry about.
That's That's like lemmings and Japan. And good luck.
Rick, how serious do you think this situation of the Hanford and I'll post this on the article that Joey sent me the link to. I'll post it on the website, USA Prepares. By the way, Joey is a USA Prepares instructor in Michigan, and he's absolutely brilliant. And when he calls in his wisdom, very, very high IQ, he sees things from different angles from most people. Very brilliant guy. And he keeps us apprised of the latest that we need to know about. Hanford, here's the title of this. Hanford nuclear site tunnel collapses, leads to mass evacuation, radiological contamination, and a FAA airspace ban. Airspace ban.
Well, you see, it's like Indian Point in New York City, just above it on the Hudson, and down in Florida, near not Pensacola, the other side. I forget the name of that town. The radiation is leaking so badly that there are things like there are no insects along the East Coast anymore. How does that work? Well, we are slowly poisoning everything, and or something is terraforming Earth right in front of our eyes, because it's crazy that they would, note this 3 Mile Island and then just continue. It's crazy.
Well,
and that's why it's number one in my all-time, before GMOs, before chemtrails, before any of it, radiation. And that's why this is the sixth epoch of trial by fire.
Rick, we can stop GMO. We can stop GMO. We can do that. I mean, if people, even if they violently wanted to stop GMOs, they could do it. I'm not suggesting that, but what I'm saying is there are ways that the villagers could stop it. It wouldn't be pleasant.
We could probably do the same thing with radiation using fullerenes. We could take structured water and carbon and lock it up. Probably.
Yeah. Lock it up, but we can't get rid of it. I mean, we can move it.
What you do is you then put it in a nice, neat bowl and you shoot it into the sun.
And that works as long as the rocket doesn't fail on the launch pad, right?
There you go. Whoops, and it falls back. There it comes. That's the new science fiction. I don't have a clue. You could
Rick,
give it to your neighbor in the center of the galaxy, the white hole, black hole thing.
Yeah,
dark energy. Here it comes.
We've been mean. Americans have been mean since the beginning. Okay, since we blamed the Tea Party on the Indians. Okay, we've been lying, cheating, stealing, obfuscating, confusing, and shifting the blame to other people who don't deserve it. So, Rick, sending our radioactive waste to our neighbors, that's not like the welcome wagon, is it?
Well, the two scientists are walking down the hall, and the one scientist said to the other, well, we can put it in hot dogs. It's a known fact that the American public will eat anything in a hot dog.
Yep. Yep. We call them tube steaks.
Yeah.
T-U-B-E.
There's a jungle out there with Upton Sinclair. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Rick, so according to this article in Natural News, Mike Adams, plutonium-239 has a half-life of 24,000 years. 24,000 years. So if we're trying to get rid of something that has a half-life of 24,000 years, that's a huge problem.
Well, that's why we want fusion. We can break it down. Fusion. Yeah. We want to break it down. We want to change it into something else. Use it as a building block. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds to me like what we have done is we have lied to the Americans, actually to the entire world, about what we're doing.
Well, you made a bunch of money, and then you left the problem to your daughter.
Yeah, like the Hooker Chemical Company, where they left a radioactive dump site. They just left. And they left it for us to clean up as an EPA Superfund site.
Yeah, the inheritance.
Rick, I had a chance to make a phone call yesterday to thank somebody, and I was out on our dirt road, and our son and Mrs. Finelli and I were installing some fence gates to move cows from one field to another. And I was along the road, and I heard this loud scraping sound about, almost a mile away. And so I drove down there. I was going toward the house anyway. And head to head, I met this guy with the road grader. And he had a really nice road grader. And he was leveling out our dirt road from the washout from the couple storms we've had. And I stopped and I rolled down the window. And I said, "You're doing a great job. You really are. Absolutely spectacular. Superb." And I said, "By the way, I just want to let you know that that gravel that was on the road, or that dirt that looks like somebody scooped it up and moved it, well, that was us. We took our backhoe and we couldn't get out of one of our gates, and we just grabbed some piled up rock and dirt, and we moved it so that we could get in and out of our gate." And he said, "That's kind of what I thought you guys did." So what we did was we took road gravel and creek gravel that was in the road in a wash down the hill, and we moved it to where it needed to be so we could get in and out of our gate. And he actually kind of appreciated it because we're, being proactive. So I thanked him for a job well done. And I decided to call his boss when I got back to the farm and tell his boss what a great job he's doing. He told me he'd been working on it had that job since January. And he's still learning, but he's really, really conscientious. And he said the roads are washing out and it's a big problem. So I called his boss, who was the number 2 guy there at the county in the road and bridges department. And I was explaining to him that this young man, John, did a fabulous, fabulous job. He said, "Well, great." I said, "By the way, I want to let you know that you probably don't know this, but one of the ditches on our road is so deep that a car flipped over in the ditch. It literally was upside down on its roof. That's how deep the ditch was. And I'm talking 3 feet deep. So, if you just lose control for a second, or if you're looking at your cell phone and you go off in the ditch, you're going to go upside down." And that's what this car did. So I explained to the number 2 guy at the road and bridges department in our county about this. And I said that, the police spray painted the car so it said no dead bodies inside. And the locals were trying to figure out how to get this thing out of the ditch and turn it over without calling a wrecker. And I explained that we used our backhoe and we pulled it out and cut our neighbor's fence and we repaired our neighbor's fence and got this car out of there and without ruining it, and towed it to this guy's house with our backhoe. And I explained that, this is probably something that the county would consider a liability, having ditches this big that they get sued over because they're dangerous. And here's what he said. He said, "I agree with you." I'm paraphrasing. "I agree with you. There are ditches that are 6 feet wide and 4 feet deep. And miles and miles and miles of them exist in our county." And he said, "We don't have enough dirt to fill them in. We don't know what to do." His words, "We don't know how to fix this problem." Now, this guy's been on the job at this particular job for over 20 years. He knows where all the roads are. He knows where all the ditches are. He's seen them all. It's not like he's new. It's not like he's from a place that has roads that are all paved. He has vast experience with dirt roads. And he's saying, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to fix them. We can't fix them. And there's not enough dirt to fix them. When we come back, I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. You're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you about the problem with the roads and bridges here in our neck of the woods in Missouri. And this is just symptomatic of what's happening all over the country. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. So, Rick, I was on the phone with the number 2 guy at Roads and Bridges in our county here in Missouri. And we had a wonderful chat. We were talking about what's really happening. And he said, the weather's crazy. You can't predict it. And I mentioned chemtrails, and he didn't really know much about them. So I told him about Dane Wigington and some of our work that we do and I pointed him to YouTube and podcasts and how he can listen to some of our information that we've talked about over the years and Republic Broadcasting and Genesis Communications and so forth. And it was very interesting. And he said, we've had, last year we had a 100-year flood. And the year before that we had a 100-year flood. And we had a 500-year flood. He said in the last 3 years we've had, 100 and 500-year floods. And they're only supposed to happen, every 100 or 500 years. We're having them every year. And he said they're wiping out our roads. And we don't have enough material to fix it. We don't have enough dirt, rock, stone. We can't fix the roads. All they can do is kind of reshape them a little bit, and they're just getting worse. They're generally not getting better, because when we first moved here, we had a small ditch. And the idea was, along the edge of the dirt road, you'd have like a 1-foot ditch, and the road would be crowned, and the water from the rain would run from the center of the road off both sides of the road and go into the ditch and then run downhill, because we have a lot of hills here in the Ozark Mountains. And everything be good. But what's happened is we've had so much rain that the rain has washed away the light soil. And it's washed it downhill. And it's gone. And what's left is what's called creek gravel. These small rocks the size of your fist and smaller. And some larger rocks the size of small cars. So that's what's left here. And it's really hard to fix the road with that, because there's not enough material. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. They can't bring in enough dump trucks full of dirt because they don't have it. They don't have the material to fill the dump trucks. So, Rick, the point I'm trying to make is we're using up things, we're wearing out things, and we're making a lot of mistakes, human mistakes, like weather manipulation. It's causing problems all over. And there are consequences to these mistakes. And there are consequences to the General Electric management style, which is, let's just worry about right now. And when you have greedy people who are only interested in their own little world, their own performance review for that year. How much money am I going to get more than I got last year? What's my raise going to be? And what do I have to do to get a bigger raise? What do I have to do to get that? They don't worry about the future. They don't worry about the ramifications, the consequences, and the downstream effects of what they're doing. That's the problem. It's as simple as just look.
Yeah, we took our topsoil and water for granted. That's why we grew corn, which, is a real problem in terms of what it does to the soil. Mm-hmm. And water, of course, is so plentiful.
And then we have stupid people in the Missouri state government. Absolutely stupid, ignorant people.
Very
good. Roy Blunt and his son, Matt, and the other people who are involved with that ilk. And they said, you know what? Corn, we'll make ethanol. We'll take a gallon of energy and we'll make 9/10 of a gallon of energy out of it, and we'll call that great. We'll have a net loss.
The tide change up in Nova Scotia of 60 feet, actually with the buoys that we use here in Oregon, would be enough power generated just in Nova Scotia to power the entire eastern seaboard.
All you're talking about...
on the moving of the waves. Tide.
What you're talking about, Rick, is something that I read about in I believe it was Popular Science or Popular Mechanics in the 60s or 70s. And basically they said, all you have to do is have a float. Or you have a wave, like a wing, that the waves move back and forth. And it creates, from the lateral motion, it creates reciprocating motion, kind of like a steam engine on a locomotive. And it generates electricity through turning a turbine. And we can use that. And it's free. It's absolutely free, except for the hardware and the engineering. Really good point. And we could have done it years ago. And how much pollution? Just the pollution in the making of the machinery. Good point, Rick. Rick, when we come back, asteroid mining, Volksgardens, everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Serious note today. So, Doc Graham's with us. Rick, I'm looking at a post, veteranstoday.com. And it says, your radiation this week, by Bob Nichols. And it's subtitled, Facing a Dying Nation. May 6, 2017. Here's how it goes on to say, a big reason Americans know they suffered through such high rads in 2009 is because the government decided somewhere in the Pentagon that killer rads showered on the unsuspecting public is worth it. Staying a world power and all. In 2009, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Chicago, Illinois got radiated the worst. Sure, some residents croaked, and some are still very sick and dying from it, but it was worth it. The real rad, this is the real rad and the real dead people we're talking about here. This is exactly word for word what this post is saying, not my words. If you have a friend or a loved one who passed from suspected rad poisoning, just suck it up. Thank you for your sacrifice. I'm sorry. Thank you for their sacrifice. So the God narrative goes. High gamma count, 2009, Pittsburgh, 75,000 counts per minute. High beta count, 2009, Chicago, 2.5 million counts per minute. Later, the beta radiation count was quietly dropped by the government just when residents needed to know about this rad stuff. We're all damaged, and some were killed by this on purpose. Rad dosing of the population by these psychopaths. The rad poisoning is still going on, too. This is way over the line. This was then and is now premeditated murder. It's a simple murder charge under the state laws. Rein in arrest, do a proper trial, and execute these homicidal morons and their accomplices. This Veterans Today article is evidence. There are about 8,000 district attorneys in the states. This is the kind of thing they're supposed to prosecute. Capital murder. You know, he's got a lot of very good points here. He's absolutely right. Murder. That's what they're doing. Premeditated, slow kill murder. Now, according to this table, it says that table of poisoned American cities, total gamma and beta radiation per hour for 2009. Pittsburgh, 75,000 counts per minute. Kansas City, Kansas, 50,000. Louisville,
you can
Kentucky.
get all of that updated every minute at netc.net or .com. The Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center, netc.com, I think it is.
Louisville, Kentucky, 43,000. Rochester, New York, 34,000. Nashville, Tennessee, 25,000. I'm just reading the first number. I'm not even rounding. These numbers are actually low. Madison, Wisconsin. You don't hear much about Madison, Wisconsin. 20,000. Dallas, Texas, 16,000. Colorado Springs, Colorado, 16,000. Washington, D.C., 14,000. And Pierre, South Dakota, 14,000. The reason I'm mentioning this, these are places that we don't really think about very often. Pierre, South Dakota, we don't hear much about Pierre or Madison, Wisconsin. But there it is. There it is. So, Rick, overhead, we're breathing it. We're breathing it. I learned that my neighbor has the same malady that I have, the same lung problem that I have, exactly the same symptoms that I have.
Yeah. That's a shame. I don't know what to say, Jeff. I just don't know what to say.
Okay. Rick, there's no escape. There's absolutely no escape. There are not enough respirator filters, even if they could do the job. There are not enough hazmat suits for us all to wear, even if they could do the job, to protect us from these morons, these mad politicians, these evil business people who have, for their own personal gain, have sold us out and polluted the entire planet. Rick, are the oceans toxic to the point where the sea life has got all kinds of deformations? They're bleeding. The fish are bleeding.
Some parts of it are starting to show wear and tear. So, it's hard to know because, while our technologies are good, we're not that good yet, obviously. We don't have a clue how, the importance of carbon dioxide is to the trees, for example. We talk about the ozone layer, but at the same time, carbon dioxide is necessary for a healthy planet. And so when they talk about global warming and carbon dioxide, it's making assumed truths, and we don't know. We simply don't know.
Rick, we have about 500,000 Volkswagens that have been sidelined and they're parked because of the scandal of Volkswagen manipulating the test sequence programming so that the Volkswagens would test for lower emissions when they're during the test cycle, but when they're actually on the road, they're emitting more pollutants. Okay, so Volkswagen, what that really means is one of the largest automakers in the world can't figure out how to meet government regulations. Okay, government say, all right, here's what you're going to do. Last year you allowed pollution, or we polluted X number of units, 50 units. Next year, 10 units. Make it happen. And they act like just because they say make it happen, scientists can make it happen. Well, sometimes science can't make it happen. So what happened is Volkswagen got beat up and they were forced to buy back some of these vehicles. So there's about 500,000 of them. And they're just being parked. Now, they're rotting. These vehicles are being rotting because they're not being used. So we've already gone through all the pollution to make these vehicles. They were perfectly acceptable. Yes, they were polluting more than the government wanted. And yes, Volkswagen lied. And yes, it was a crime. I agree with all that. But on the other hand, are we just going to throw away all of that work, all of that pollution that we've already made in constructing these vehicles? That's insanity. Absolute insanity. It's kind of like cash for clunkers. That was insanity as well. So here we have vehicles that we could be using. We're going to let them rot. We don't know what to do with them. It's a major financial loss that everybody's going to pay for that buys Volkswagens. And then we're going to replace them with something else that's going to make more pollution in the construction of these replacements. Who are these people? It's absolute insanity. Now, if you want to beat somebody up, you beat up the top management of Volkswagen. You arrest the president. You arrest the heads of the departments that are involved in the engineering people, everybody who signed off on these designs. You arrest them and you put them in prison. And then the other companies say, General Motors will say, wow, look what they did to Volkswagen. We're not going to do that. And you arrest the board of directors and you put them in prison. And then you have people who are afraid that if they do the wrong thing, they're going to go to prison. And you round up the guys who were involved in the design and the manufacturing, the top management of General Electric and all those other companies who were involved in the Fukushima nuclear reactor disaster. You round them up, try them, arrest them, and put them in prison. And then we'll start to see some clearer, better designs that are more friendly to the earth. I think that's the answer. And any politicians who are involved, arrest them too and put them in prison for a long time. I mean, like, at least a lifetime.
Well,
I would like to see people go to jail. I would like to see people go to prison for their crimes. Just like I think ethanol, corn to ethanol, is a hoax. What an idiotic idea. Taking food and turning it into alcohol and then making everybody buy it for their vehicles and get fewer miles per gallon. Does that make any sense? I don't think so. And you have stupid, ignorant politicians who get bribed into voting for that kind of thing. And I remember sitting in the car with one of these stupid, ignorant politicians, former politician, high-ranking guy, never finished college. And I remember looking at him, I was behind the wheel, and I said, did you ever take a science class? This guy wanted to be state auditor. I said, he ran for it. He ran for state auditor. I looked at him and I said, did you ever take an accounting class? No. He's a theology major. Praise the Lord. Studied the Bible and takes bribes. Oh, pretty frustrating to me. I don't know, Rick, I'm getting grumpy.
Yeah?
I don't know if it's
when you start
steroids.
to really look at something, there's several ways you can see it, and some of them don't have nice endings.
Well, I can't figure out a nice ending for this radiation problem, Rick. Can you?
There isn't one. That's the whole deal. It serves no purpose. It had a double sword when it was used in medicine, but there are better cures for cancer now.
Just got a call this morning. From our daughter, a good friend of hers. His wife has a brain tumor. And of course, the first thing I thought about was electromagnetic radiation. She's a teacher. Where are the access points in the school? Does she spend a lot of time in the lab? Is there a microwave transmitting antenna right near her? Does she use her cell phone a lot? Is there a microwave tower where she lives? I want to thank our friends at YouTube who have decided that USA Prepares is advertiser unfriendly. Rick, we are not advertiser friendly, according to YouTube, because of the kind of things we talk about. We talk about disasters, and we talk about riots, and we talk about things that people are doing and what to do about them. So in terms of advertisers, we're not friendly. Now, we could fix that. We could talk about who's got the best hamburgers in Springfield, Missouri, and that would probably make us more advertiser friendly on YouTube. However, because we are not advertiser friendly, I want to tell you that what I've noticed is since we've been determined advertiser unfriendly, our ranking has gone up. We are right this minute. Thank you, Genesis Communications Network. We're number 2. We're number 2
I
in
remember
GCN
when
top.
we first started, and you were excited when we were number 11.
Well, right now on Genesis, we're number 2, according to GCNlive.com. Thank you so much, class, for making that happen. Now, who deserves the credit? Your instructors. Guys like Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Norm Shealy, John Regan, Gwyneth
How
Isaacs.
is John Regan doing, by the way? I haven't heard from him for a while.
John Regan has his own set of concerns. They're health related. A number of, and I'm not going to spill the beans because I haven't been given permission. But all of us are a little worse for wear. All of us have. I believe that one of the things that helps us not do as well as we might normally do is because we read about so many bad things. I believe that, and we report on them, and we share these with our friends and family. And I think it takes its toll on us. I really do. Rick, it's not that we go looking for bad things. It's just that they seem to jump out at us. And we're talking about Fukushima. We're talking about Hanford. We're talking about the things that are in front of us that we pay attention to. Like 3,000 workers have taken cover at the Hanford Reservation. 3,000 workers. Shelter in place. They were told to shelter in place. Who's involved? They're on an immediate lockdown. The feds are involved. The state's involved. The locals are involved. I mean, it's a big deal. And we look at that, and I believe that, when we talk about these things, we naturally extrapolate in our minds based on the formal training we've had, the informal learning that we've done, the lifelong learning that we have. We put all that together, connect the dots, and we go, this isn't good. This is pretty serious. And my reaction to Fukushima the day after it happened, I said it was the worst man-made disaster since Noah's flood. That came right out of my mouth. I didn't plan that. I was on the radio, and that came out. And I stand by it. I still stand by it. It's true. And this Hanford thing, this is man-made. It didn't have to happen. Every bit of it's man-made. And all those workers are told, just wear these badges. This is good. It's safe. It's safe because, how do we know it's safe? Because the workers before scientists say it's safe. It's good. We've got business partners that say it's safe. The government says it's safe. You guys are in good shape. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Then they have a collapse. Tunnel collapses. They've got 2,600 railroad cars buried underground with radioactive waste. They don't know what to do with them. There's no plan. There's no plan that's good. And what do? They say, take cover now. How big is the Hanford Reservation? It's half the size of Rhode Island. It's half the size of a tiny state. It's a pretty big place. And it's leaking radioactivity.
Yeah,
George in New Hampshire, welcome.
Scary.
George in New Hampshire, welcome. You're on with Rick Miller and me.
Hi. I just wanted to say two things if I could. One is, there's a new brain tumor removal technique that the Swedes have discovered, and it's now in the United States. And it uses ultrasound combined with magnetic resonance imaging, and they focus a beam, not unlike a magnifying glass, the way you'd focus a beam of light, and it would burn out the tumors without any incisions. And
so, without invasion? Can you hold through the break and tell us more about this when we come back?
Sure.
You know, I think, and maybe, I know the guy who, I know him pretty well. He's in Virginia. He might love to hear from you. So let's talk about that. Georgia, New Hampshire, USA Prepares instructor. We'll be right back. Class, you're getting a chance to see USA Prepares in action. What I mean by that is we have someone who has a problem with a brain tumor, and Georgia, New Hampshire, USA Prepares instructor calls in with some information that is something that we didn't know about. George, please continue.
Yes, if I could just give out just a small bit of information that anyone in the listening audience who has such a problem could contact this outfit. They sound like a good outfit. They're called Swedish Medical Center, and they're in Seattle, Washington.
I know Swedish. I've been there.
Okay, so what do you think of it, Dr. Rick?
Swedish is, Harborview is better. I prefer the University of Washington. It's about the toys. The whole thing is networked, and so the polyclinic and all of the different medical up there is like Loma Linda. It's just unbelievable. You can get anything done there. And your sports medicine is state-of-the-art. Out where I live, you're lucky to get what you get. Swedish is okay. You're thinking of doing something there?
Well, not for me, but what it was that I know that there's different techniques that aren't well known instead of incisional surgery.
Yeah,
they can use ultrasound.
Swedish
I don't even know.
Like right in there.
Good. Yeah,
they're connected with the polyclinic, and the polyclinic has probably got the best surgeons ever. I mean, they really do. Seattle is really good for medicine.
Right.
It's about toys. That's why the UW is considered the fourth richest university in the world, because of the toys. That's where the research happens, when you have toys.
Well, you know, too, it's also the men and women behind those toys that really make the difference, because
you're working with advanced technology, and so it right out of the gate eliminates the average person that's there to run 7 patients an hour rather than 6, so they can make an extra $200 an hour.
Right. They even have a mention of a mission statement that mentions high priority on charity care as well. So it sounds like the heart's in the right place. And this technique, I know, there's a lot of techniques coming out of different places that, for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to get to the population. And you know, and I know, the hand, no matter how precise, and it was the slightest miscalculation or just slightly off, and everybody's different, it could make the difference between coming out of an operation successfully or in a worse condition, right?
Well, then that's why surgery generally requires somebody that's also making jewelry. Yeah, you know, the movement of the hand, especially. So that's surgery requires a certain kind of touch. Anesthesiology is the highest thing in medicine, and then the next one down would be brain surgery, and then heart surgery, and then normal surgery, and then you fall down into OBGYN and all the rest of it. But in terms of rigor and class, all your high-end studies are done in surgery and anesthesiology. That's where all the spooks would be.
George, I'm looking at the website. I'm looking at the website right now, Swedish, swedish.org. And there's a page that says, new treatment for essential tremor is life-changing. It says, essential tremor, a movement disorder, can make it nearly impossible for some people to use their hands. A breakthrough treatment called focused ultrasound has been very successful in helping many patients. Swedish is the only hospital in the Pacific Northwest to offer the treatment. And then it says one patient says focused ultrasound gave him his life back, and then there's a video. I will put a link to this article on the website USA Prepares. And Georgia, this is really good information for people to do more research for themselves to find out if this makes sense for them. Really good point, and it's something that's new to me. I didn't know about this.
Well, no, you know, and I know that you can't be everywhere. You share your life experiences. Dr. Rick shares his life experiences. And I mean, it's kind of like we're looking in different directions of a compass, and I can see things on my front that you can't and vice versa. But you know and I know, if we just share the information with each other, and sometimes, I won't go on and on, I'll just say something as simple as if you see somebody choking, or you know, they're just choking or they're coughing, just putting your arms over your head straight up can make all the difference to open a windpipe. And I was in a place and I saw a man having problems. I remember somebody taught me that trick, so I went over to him and I said, look, put your arms up, put your hands up. And he did, and it seemed to clear up after a while. And he came over to me later and he thanked me. He says, you know, I appreciate you coming over and giving me that tip. It helped me. But it was a minor thing. But it's like you know, if we just all give our little minorness all along the way, I you know, like I said, like your program, it's a blessing. And I mean, and you're drawing like a magnet people who are like-minded, and like I said, God only knows you probably won't know until you get to the other side, maybe the extent of the help, you know, you've given people. And I mean, and like I said, just as there's people who are trying to help people, there are people out there, you know, by negligence or whatnot, that are poisoning the planet, ripping people off, and leaving people the worse for it in so many different ways and at so many different levels. So that's all I can say. But I just wanted to pass that on when I heard, and like I said, is that I was happy that I happen to have that tidbit of information. And as always, gentlemen, I like your program. I like you, gentlemen, and like I said, God bless, okay?
George, thank you so much for being with us today. That's George, New Hampshire, USA Prepares instructor.
I have to end with a comedy in part of it when the president goes up to the alien and says, why can't we, Jack Nicholson, why can't we all just get along? And the alien laughs. Yeah.
Why can't we all just...
Good luck with that, man.
Why can't we all just... That's because we have politicians who...
Yeah, right. Good luck with that, man.
Yeah, and going up to a politician, it's like... How can anybody stand being involved with politicians? You know, I think one of the best things that we could do is socially isolate these politicians. You know, if they show up for an event, you know, kissing babies and things like that just I find revolting. If I had a baby, I would never let a politician touch my baby, nor my wife. I find just the thought of politicians revolting. They will steal from people things that the politicians don't own and promise them to other people for favors. It's like they're brokers. They're brokers in a theft ring. That's what they are.
Whatever works. You know, that's yes, politics and religion.
You know, and I don't need a broker in religion either. That's between... No, I don't.
Someone to talk to God for you, like the Pope?
Yeah. Well, the Pope, the priest, the rabbi, the minister, whoever it may be, the preacher... you know, yeah. I'm telling you, I live in the buckle of the Bible Belt here. Okay, this is Praise the Lord Central. There's a church that has 3,500 seats. It's called the James River Assembly of God, and if you don't show up, I mean, I'm not a member of that corporation. If you don't show up for services, they call you because they notice that your donation was missing. Yeah. And they want to know, is everybody okay? You guys okay? Because we haven't seen you in services. You know, and churches today, the big ones, have facial recognition. So they can scan and see if you're getting enough praise the Lord. And Vinny, you weren't there. Are you okay?
Yeah, what I heard is scary last week is that the Mossad went out and arrested 400 Palestinians for future crimes. It happened.
Future crimes.
Yeah. The computer said these guys are going to do this, in 28 minutes. And that was good enough to arrest them.
Yeah, and how do you...
to the New World.
How do you defend yourself against that?
It's crazy.
How do you defend yourself against that?
You run maritime law, commander-in-chief, and have a railgun.
Rick, I'm afraid that's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm afraid that the villagers are going to have had enough, and they're going to start their own brand of vigilante.
Yeah, I'm not going to take
justice.
it anymore. Yeah, good luck with that too.
Yeah.
What they've done is they've gone out and found all the sociopaths to fly those aircraft that lay down the chemtrails. They have found the sociopaths to fit the armor and Napoleon complex needed for the kind of law enforcement we currently enjoy. They've gone out, the military, guy, I don't believe it, man. We're going to stare at this goat until it dies. That's typical.
Well, I can see what's happening. It's we've talked about de-policing here at USA Prepares, and what that means is the cops are realizing that they're not getting the respect that they demand. Now, I'm not saying they deserve it.
They have to earn it.
That's exactly right. I don't respect anyone who hasn't earned it. I don't start out respecting people. They earn my respect by deeds and actions, not words. Deeds and actions. You know, the kind of thing that people do when they think nobody's looking. I'm talking about good deeds. You know, there are people who do nice...
between morals and ethics. There you are.
Yeah.
Ethics, and there... morals, you do it.
You know, I was talking with a gal yesterday, and for those who have had the occasion to meet one of our boys, he sees things in black and white. Not too much gray area in the way he looks at things. It's either right, wrong, do it, don't do it, that kind of thing. And he said something very, very interesting. He said, "Dad, I'm absolutely sick of people throwing their broken beer bottles or empty beer bottles or cans or trash or McDonald's wrappers or Burger King wrappers. I'm sick of picking them up because I don't want our cows to eat them and choke and die on this trash that they feel that they need to throw out the window on our farm." I'll tell you what he said when we come back. So, our son sees things in black and white. One of our boys does. And he said, "Dad, I'm sick of picking up these glass bottles, these broken bottles. I'm sick of being concerned about the cows and the damage that this trash can do to them. They can eat these plastic Walmart bags that people throw out. It sounds like we live in a dump, but it's not the case. But people do throw their trash right out their windows, and we're sick of it." So he mentioned this, and he said, "You know, what would happen, Dad, if that trash ended up not on our farm, over the fence that people throw their bottles and stuff, and it ended up back in the road? What would happen?" I kind of looked at him like, interesting thought. Well, I happened to see 2 Budweiser beer bottles in the middle of the road yesterday on this dirt road. Now, it's a dirt road, and you can see where the tire prints have been because you can see the tracks. So here are these 2 Budweiser aluminum bottles. I haven't never seen those before, but they ended up on our road, and they were in the middle of the road. And so while we're working on the fence, just down the road from us, we could see the cars and the trucks slowly going around these bottles. Now, I wonder how many of them it will take to be in the road before the people who live on this road have had it, just like we've had it. And then if they see somebody throwing trash out, they'll ram their vehicle. I wonder what it's going to take to stop this nonsense. I don't know. But I can... We're not picking up the trash. We're not going to pick up the trash in the road anymore. We're not going to do it. We're going to leave it there. We're going to leave it there until everybody gets sick of it. We're going to pick it up on our farm so the cows don't, get hurt. But, it's annoying, Rick. People's irresponsible behavior, their carelessness, their cavalier attitude toward their neighbors. Obviously, these people are our neighbors that are doing this. Why?
Usually it's someone young that is in a hurry and doesn't think until later in life when they have to pick up their own trash.
Yeah. Well, that's something that, all right, I'm going to blame their parents and I'm going to blame the school system.
That's right. That's where they learn their behavior.
I was taught, don't do things that aren't nice. Don't do things to other people that you wouldn't want them to do to you. I remember when one of my students would get out of he'd come to our factory in Virginia. He'd get out of his car and drop his cigarette butt in our driveway and then, put it out with his foot. And he'd leave it there. And he left it there. And he'd do it day after day after day. Finally, I'd had it with him. I didn't say anything. So I was teaching class at our factory every other day. The students all arrived at our factory, and they're all ready for class to begin. And I said, I'll be right back. And I went and I got my trash can from the classroom. And I walked right outside, and they're all looking at me. Where's Mr. Finelli going? I took my trash can, opened this guy's door to his car, and I emptied my trash can in his car.
Yeah. I
emptied my trash can in his car. And then I made sure I tapped it out so everything, left the trash can. And then I brought the trash can in, and I didn't say a word. Not one word. That was crystal clear that I didn't like what he was doing. And you know what? He never did it again. And no one else even thought about doing it again. So, there are things that you can do to teach people lessons. Now, I'm not saying I had some gooey, drippy, syrupy stuff in there. I didn't. I mean, it was all dry trash. But it was trash. And he had to pick it out. And he was absolutely shocked that anyone would do what I did.
Well, he was doing it. He just didn't see himself doing it.
Well, cigarette butts are trash. I mean, what do they think? They magically disappear? Those things have a half-life of probably 50 years.
Well, yeah.
Rick, Rick, I apologize for being grumpy, but a couple more weeks and I'll be off these steroids, and maybe I'll be less grumpy. But I'm not taking it anymore. And actually, it's really good because the state of Missouri's coming after us for another $1,000. I think they've exceeded their time limit. I think they lost this battle. Second 2 out of 2, I think they've lost. And I'll keep our class updated as to how we're faring against the big bad state of Missouri's Division of Revenue. Rick, thanks so much. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.